Welcome to Activate Your Introvert, the podcast for entrepreneurs and business leaders to help unlock more productivity and creativity so you get a better business. Many people in business avoid making some of the phone calls they should or could to get more business or just to improve their business. I know many extroverts who don't like making these calls, but it seems especially true of introverts. That might be because an introvert is aware of a few things they perceive as problematic. The introvert trait of internal processing may make it seem harder to have discussions on the phone where gaps in the conversation become more obvious. Maybe some introverts lose people energy in their phone conversations or think that they will. Maybe they're just overthinking it. Of course, it could just be plain procrastination. Some years ago, when I was having to make some phone calls, I'd tell myself first thing in the morning, no, wait until tea time because then they'll be ready to take the call. And of course, at about 10, 11 o'clock it would be, well, they might be waiting for lunch now. Let's wait till after lunch. Let's wait till just before they're going home. Oh no, they will be going home now. Let's do it first thing in the morning. And maybe, of course, these introverts that are avoiding making calls are just like many other people in the world. They don't particularly like using one of the best apps available to help increase sales. Dealing with an assassin always makes one slightly nervous. But I found that Anthony Stears, the telephone assassin, was not only a perfect gentleman, he has some great ways of making it easier for us to use the phone. Anthony's contact details are on the sleeve notes for this episode. And if you'd like to talk to me about any of the issues in today's podcast or any others relating to introverts in your organisation, I'd love to talk. introvertinbusiness.co.uk. But now, without any further ado or procrastination, let's welcome the telephone assassin, Mr. Anthony Stears. Welcome, Anthony. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, John. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm brilliant, thank you. Just before we start, I've got two questions. Are you an introvert or an extrovert? And what makes you say that?
I'm probably more of an introvert in the fact that, despite the fact we get on stage all the time, I'm quite shy and quiet. I can be loud and bubbly and share my opinion quite freely, but quite often I like to sit back and listen and watch.
Lots of introverts I know are very happy to do the loud, bubbly part, especially on stage. But then, as you say, then there comes that time when you just want to sit back, watch and recover your energy. So the other one that always strikes me, the telephone assassin. It sounds a bit lethal.
Please don't worry, it's nowhere near as aggressive as it sounds. It was a nickname I got when I used to make calls for lots of different clients, and some of them used to try and give me a database, and I would always say, just give me a wish list or a hit list, not a database. And a couple of them started referring to me as their telephone assassin, so I thought I was onto something there and wrote the book.
Brilliant. Oh, I love it. Yeah. You've been working with people and making phone calls for a long time, but what is it about making phone calls, particularly for business, that people don't like?
I think there's a few things that they don't like. Usually they've had a couple of bad experiences where they have been cold called by somebody who has rattled off a script or been a bit abrupt on the phone, and they don't want to come across like that. So I think usually we've got a bit of a bad perception of a sales call or a prospecting call. But I think one of the main things, particularly probably with the introverts and the extroverts, we don't like to bother people. When you make a phone call, unless it's already scheduled, you're interrupting somebody's day. And I think we've all had a phone call at that really bad time.
It's a really, really interesting one, because, yeah, certainly introverts don't like being interrupted by the phone. There's a few standard memes go floating around the internet on it. And so I guess what we're doing is we're putting our own mindset onto the other person.
Absolutely. We project onto others, basically. But there's a really easy way to change our mindset around this and not feel like we're rudely barging into somebody's day and interrupting them. Tip that I always share around this, and I say you should do on every outbound phone call really, is you need to start the call by getting permission to speak. So some of us already do that. We may say, are you free to chat, or are you okay to talk for a couple of minutes? What I do is I politely assume that now is a bad time. So if I was phoning you, John, and we'd not spoken before, I'd go, oh, good afternoon, John. My name's Anthony Stears. I was just hoping to chat to you for a couple of minutes, but I'm assuming perhaps now isn't the best time. And I wondered if there's a better time to call you back.
Oh, I like that. Also, very much about swapping out that where people are going, no, go away.
Absolutely. Well, it absolutely it doesn't set off any red flags that say it's a sales call. And the last thing people hear there is you making it really easy for them to get out of this call, which makes them jump to the assumption that you can't possibly be in sales, or if you are, you're rubbish at it and you're not to be feared. So either way, they haven't got their back up straight away. But I don't know if you noticed, but I gave you my full name, but I didn't say where I was calling from or what it was about. I just said I wanted to chat for a couple of minutes. And that was quite deliberate, because if I've caught you in a good mood and you're not in the middle of something, hopefully you're going to be curious and you're going to say, well, actually, I've got a couple of minutes now. What is the call about?
Yeah.
Because although we're all busy people, I think we could all fit in 2 minutes in our day if we wanted to. And the beauty of when you get that response is that you know they're engaged, but what you've managed to do is get them curious into why you have called, not interested in what you're calling about, which is what most salespeople do. They do that thing where they phone up and they go, hi, John, I'm calling from ABC Limited and we've got the best product in the world and I'm going to hit you with a feature followed by a benefit in the hope that I get all the way to the end of my pitch. And if you haven't hung up, there's a really small chance that you might say yes. So I joke, I call that premature elaboration. It's getting overexcited and blurting a pitch over somebody.
I like the premature elaboration. I have to be careful how I said that.
But this, like I say, getting permission to speak generally means that you won't have any bad calls. Because if somebody is in the middle of a crisis, they're about to go into a meeting, they're trying to finish off a tender document, they'll say, actually, you're right, now isn't a good time. Could you give me a call back at 3 o'clock? Or would you mind giving me a call on Friday? And they're actually asking for a callback. And you can then say, no worries at all. Yeah, I'll pop it in my diary now. Do you want me to send you a calendar invite? And I always say that because it makes me sound efficient. It shows I'm putting it in my diary. Some people will say yes. Some people will say no. Some people will say yes and won't accept the invite. But again, when I phone at 4 o'clock on Friday, I would do that same introduction. I'd go, hey, John, Anthony Stears. As promised, I said I'd call you at 4 o'clock today, but I know you're a busy man. If now isn't a good time, let me know a better time to call you back. I would rather go through that with you 5 times and wait a month if it means that when you are ready to talk, we can have a proper conversation. And this is where the contradiction to what people assume about this aggressive telephone assassin thing is. It's not about selling to people, it's about helping them to buy. So it's the analogy I always give typically if you're prospecting is you're dropping off a pizza menu. Technically, that's all you're trying to do. And a lot of people are happy to receive it, I think. So yeah, hopefully that gives people a few tips on doing that introduction, because if now isn't a good time, they'll tell you, you can reschedule it. And the point I try and make is that although sales is a numbers game, it has changed. It's no longer about convincing people to buy or overcoming objections. In my mind, it's just about capitalizing on the conversations people are ready to have. When you get permission to speak and they're ready to engage with you, you need to be ready too. And you need to react to that individual, not just have a script that you're going to rattle off, because unfortunately, the person you're phoning has not been sent their copy of the script.
Yeah. So one of the things we started off talking about why people don't like making calls, particularly introverts. The sales call, where we've had a bad experience of a sales call in the past, you've knocked that one out the way by getting permission to talk to them, basically. The same thing again, as introverts, we don't like being bothered by calls. So therefore, we're not going to like bothering other people with calls. You've knocked that one out the way as well. I mean, you mentioned the fear of rejection, of course. I guess that's a big one.
Yeah. So none of us like rejection. And when you go out prospecting, if people say no or hang up on you, it can be quite disheartening. There's a few things you can do to avoid rejection. Don't try and sell, just try and educate and create awareness. And in that prospecting process, you'll get a lot of voicemails for people that don't know who you are and aren't expecting your call. One of my tips is don't leave voicemails for those people. If they don't know who you are and they're not expecting your call, if I leave 10 messages and only one person calls me back, I get a complex that people don't want to talk to me. And I know that's not true, and I want all of you introverts and extroverts out there to pay attention to this, because nearly 2/3 of my calls that I make, outbound calls, the person I'm phoning thanks me for phoning them at the end. And when you get a thank you after you've called them for phoning them, that is what really makes my heart warms my heart and makes me kind of go, it was worthwhile. They're glad I phoned. Okay. And the kick up the bum I'm going to give some of you who don't do this is you are depriving your market by not reaching out to them. Just let them know that you're there. You don't have to sell to them. You just drop off a pizza.
So don't try and sell, which helps you get around the fear of rejection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the other things I've noticed, just quickly, with a lot of introverts, they value humility. Therefore, they don't like being the person on the phone that says, oh, I've got the best, whatever it might be.
Yeah, when it comes to doing the pitch, it can make a lot of us cringe because it feels really boastful, almost arrogant, because you've got to tell them how good you are, right? You want them to pay you some money. And a lot of us do struggle with this. I always say it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a landscaper. The best way to perfect your pitch is to share a success story somebody can relate to. Okay, don't tell them how good you are. Just show them a case study of a client who is similar to them and see what they say about you. As business owners or account managers or as in sales, we need to be talking to our past customers and building these mini case studies and building what I would call your credibility library. Because this credibility library means that even when you get new starters coming on board, you can get them proactively reaching out to clients and showing that you guys are credible. And one tip I'd give is you put labels on these case studies so that you know when to use them. For example, if you're particularly strong in a certain industry, then labeling by industry is a great thing to do. If for example, I dealt with loads of accountants, I could reach out to other accountants and say, hey there, my name's Anthony Stears. I'm the telephone assassin. I help people get more value and close more business over the telephone. I'm assuming you're probably not looking for training right now. Is that correct? And they say, yes, we're not. So always deal with the most common objection. And then I just say to them, in case you ever decide to look into some training in the future, could I share 2 case studies of accountants I've worked with recently so you can see what they say about me? That's me dropping off my pizza menu. When I'm sharing these testimonials and these case studies with people, sometimes I'll get booked by a managing director. Sometimes it's the head of HR. And if I'm talking to the head of HR, then I'll share what another HR manager has said about me, because they'll use very similar language, they'll have similar values. So yeah, build that credibility library and you can keep hold of your humility. You just go and drop off pizza menus and share some of the good work.
The one final one, because we've only got a minute or so left, Anthony, is you mentioned earlier about people not liking to close the conversation. Is that the famous sales close, or is that something else?
So there are a variety of different sales tactics. The thing that I always do to close off a conversation, typically you can ask somebody if they have all the information they need to make their decision. That can be a way of suggesting that you want to know if they're ready to make a decision. Quite often, once you answer their questions, they'll start to tell you when they're ready. The tip I want to give is actually closing off each conversation that you have, is that you can prevent what I call pipeline constipation. You know, where you have that excited phone call with somebody and then they go quiet on you a month later after they've asked you to email them a massive proposal and all this kind of stuff. At the end of every conversation, just take final responsibility for the next time you're going to speak to them. If you take final responsibility for the next time you're going to speak to them, then you're in control of what's going to happen next and you can keep that pipeline moving. And even with those people that you drop a pizza menu off and they say, actually, no, we're not looking for training right now, I'm happy to look at some case studies, I would say, no worries. Well, look, I'll send them over. Let me know if you've got any questions. But can I ask, is it okay to touch base in maybe 3 or 6 months and just see if anything's changed? Or when do you think you might start looking at training again?
Of the people that you work with that don't like phone calls, do you find more introverts don't like it, or is it general?
Everybody's different. And I think it kind of depends on what mood you're in. But the majority of people are not a fan of interrupting somebody's day and pitching at them.
So this isn't about introverts kind of going, oh, I'm introverted, I can't do it. Nobody really likes doing it.
Nobody likes doing it. But no, I think you're right.
Fantastic. And that links nicely back conversation I had with Ben Kench about sales techniques a while ago. Mm-hmm. And very much, again, as he said, the introverts tend to be better at this kind of thing because they're interested in the other person, not interested in talking about themselves.
Absolutely. You've got that secret card up your sleeve.
Anthony, I think that's been incredibly useful. Thank you. If any of the listeners want to get back in touch with you and ask for some more help, how would they do that?
My website is anthonystears.co.uk. So it's ANTHONYSTEARS.co.uk. I look forward to hearing from you.
And I'll put that in the sleeve notes as well, so people should just be able to click on it. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your time, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.